Hello and welcome to Spokane County Spotlight. I'm Spokane County Commissioner Shelly O'Quinn, and my guests today are Mount Spokane General Manager Brad McQuarrie and John Pederson, Planning Director for Spokane County. Welcome to Spokane County Spotlight.
Well, thank you for having me.
Mount Spokane is Washington State's largest state park, and there are some exciting plans underway for expanding operations at the ski and snowboard park. But today, before we go into the details of the exciting expansion, we're going to start with a little bit of history. So Brad, why don't you start by taking us back to the beginning?
Sure. Well, I'm certainly not a historian, but I have, done quite a bit of research, and a lot of people tell me and send me stuff from the developed history of the mountain. But I know that it was, talking to the Native American tribes in the region, that it was a place to go gather berries it's there. They got to go climb it like the rest of us. So I think it was very important to their culture. And then in the early 1900s, a gentleman by the name of Francis Cook built a small cabin, and him and his son hand built the road to that cabin, and it's very high on the south face of the mountain, and unbelievable that they were able to put that in. He had a little toll booth there, 50 cents, which doesn't sound like much now, but I'm sure was a lot, but didn't have too many takers. So ended up putting it into trust and then donating it, wanted to donate it to the county as a county park, and it ended up turning into the first state park east of the Cascades. So it started out at 1,500 acres in 1927, Mount Spokane State Park, and now is 15,000 acres,
Wow.
One of the largest state park in the system. So.
And definitely a gem for our region.
Yeah, you bet.
Now, I think Mount Spokane had a different name in the earlier years.
It was called Old Mount Baldy, or Mount Baldy. So not a very romantic name. So I think the icon as Mount Spokane really matched the city and the region.
And I think that came about in the early 1912 timeframe. But who was responsible from taking it to a state park, which it is, but who's responsible for actually developing the ski facilities?
Well, it was basically community clubs, ski clubs. There's 3 different ski clubs at the time. The Spokane Ski Club, which still has membership today. I was just at their annual event. Not quite as involved with the mountain as they were back then. Basically, they were the one raising money, getting land donated. W.H. Coles, Davenport, Cheney Coles donated, it was almost 1,000 acres between them. And that made up the core of the ski area, early 30s. And then they built a jump hill and rope tows, and then the CCC started building the lodge, which that burned down in 1952, right after a major remodel. So that would be something equivalent to the Mount Hood Lodge, just gorgeous, and we sure wish that was around today. But
so they did the remodel and then it burnt down.
It did, the day before it was supposed to open.
Unfortunate. And has it always been a popular attraction, or was there a point in time that it just really took off?
Well, it's slowly, incrementally been improved and grown all the way through time, but, rich history in the 30s, obviously one of the first ski patrols. In the 40s, one of the pieces of Mount Spokane's history is that it had the first double chairlift in the world, and I still get calls from ski historians and people looking for information on that. But before that, it was rope tows, and then they had single chairlifts where one person would be sitting. But the first double chairlift in the world is a great thing to be able to say that we had at Mount Spokane.
Well, I also love how Spokane has all these firsts. We created Father's Day. We have one of the largest 3-on-3 basketball tournaments in the world. I love how when you start looking at the history of our community and even relating back to Mount Spokane, that we have a first. So I think we have a lot to be proud of. Let's transition a little bit to present time, and that what does an average ski season look like? How many people come during the day, on the weekends, and where do they come from? Are they all local, or do we attract from out of the area?
Well, a majority of the folks are definitely local, but we do attract quite a few people who come down out of Canada to do shopping in the holidays, and they'll come up for a day of skiing. And we're so blessed to have 5 ski areas in the region that we are becoming a destination for many folks. So it's quite an asset, especially to have something like Mount Spokane that's 30 minutes away from a lot of people's homes. But we're seeing about, well, 3,000 people a day on a busy day.
Wow.
And yeah, and up to 100,000 or more in a given season. So it's a significant economic driver for the region in the winter.
Well, and I think those numbers also make it a good story as to why we needed the expansion. And I know that a lot of our listeners have probably read the paper and have been following the fact that we are going to have an expansion. So why don't we go ahead and transition into that? And because the history is the first part of our story, and now we get to talk about the future of where Mount Spokane is going to be going. So can you start by explaining the role of Mount Spokane 2000 and how this expansion started?
You bet. Well, I should back up a little bit. So the ski area was originally started as a nonprofit, ski clubs that weren't owned by a private entity. And then it went through some private ownership for many, many years. And then in 1997, the nonprofit corporation Mount Spokane 2000 took it over again. So, and I'm the general manager for the nonprofit. And in the first few years, we were still trying to get people to come back to the mountain. We had driven them away for during the 80s and early 90s, and people started coming back and really supporting the mountain in significant ways, and our skier visits started to incrementally increase to where we were having capacity issues and density issues around the mountain. So in 2003, we submitted a master development plan to the state park, and it was an extensive plan that involved expanding the terrain and lift systems, improvements to the lodges, existing lifts, parking lots, and it was a big plan that took a lot of time and effort and very transparent public process to weed through the different issues and to find a common ground to where we could at least bring that to the commission for a decision. So it was a long process. This November, the commission did decide to move forward on the expanded terrain piece, also setting aside a large area as natural forest area for the natural plant and animal systems, and setting aside an area that wouldn't be developed but would be available for backcountry skiing, snowshoeing and different things. So it was a compromise. Not everybody got exactly what they wanted, but I think for the most part, everybody's very happy, and they realize that the commission had a difficult decision to make and did a good job on it.
Well, and this is where county government comes into play. Maybe some of our viewers are wondering, well, why do we have county, planning director sitting at the table if this is a state park? But this is where we get to dig into the weeds a little bit, and county government does play a role in the expansion of the state park, the ski system. So maybe you want to make a few comments here.
Sure, we do, Commissioner. And as Brad has alluded to, the process by which the State Parks Commission went about in allowing for the expansion of the existing ski area was to do a couple things. One was to reclassify under the State Parks Commission a portion of the land that they identified as a potential alpine ski area expansion, to allow for the ability to study various alternatives to look at the expansion of the ski area. And that required a very detailed environmental review process, which we coordinated with the State Parks Department. They went through 2 rounds of very extensive and lengthy, as Brad could tell you, lengthy public participation process to study the various alternatives that were required to allow for the reclassification of the parkland itself by the Parks Commission, and then the environmental analysis of different alternatives that would be looked at to measure the environmental impacts, which then the county has a role in the permitting process for allowing the ability to expand and to issue the required permits for the chairlifts themselves and the lift facilities, and also the timber harvest, and also site grading, and all those impacts were addressed in the very detailed environmental analysis that Brad and his team had to go through. And that was culminated this last year, and then the result of that was the reclassification by the State Parks Commission. So the next step in the process would be Brad and his team to come see the county for those required permits to construct the facility. So we're really excited about that.
So I know you mentioned that the state park total is about 15,000 acres.
It's about almost 14,000.
14,000 acres. So of that, what percentage or how many acres make up the ski park? And what was the size of the expansion?
Yeah, you bet.
Just to put this in perspective.
Yeah. So the park is almost 14,000 acres. The concession area, the part that state parks designated that they would lease out to an exclusive concessionaire is 1,400 acres. And then out of that 1,400 acres is an 800-acre PSEA, they called it, potential expansion area. And out of that 800 acres, they allowed us a total footprint of 279 acres, which would be about 80 acres of trails. And the remainder of that expansion area would be left in its natural state.
Great.
And of that 279 acres, the only really portion of that, which would be the developed portion, is approximately 79 acres that would be involved for the new chairlift and the 7 new ski runs. And again, only a portion of that 79 acres would be impacted by construction of the chairlift facilities and also any kind of timber harvest or removal of trees to facilitate the run. So it's a really very, very small percentage of the overall area that would be developed and impacted to the environment from the new chairlift.
And I know that you've both alluded to the fact that this was a long process with a lot of public input, and as with any process, there are people on both sides. So, and I know one of the issues that was brought up was regarding the timber harvest, and it's been the commitment from your team to have minimal impact as you're going into construct your new slope. So maybe you could comment on the time frame so that you'll have the least amount of impact and damage to the area while you're building out your slope.
You bet. Well,
Or maybe even John can do that because he understands as
John
well.
hasn't told me all the restrictions yet, but as far as the state parks are concerned, they issued what's called a plan of development, and we're going to be bringing that to the county and getting other agencies to weigh in on that as well. But the requirements from state parks are extensive. There's a breeding and nesting restriction, which is from March 1st till July 31st, I believe. And that's a majority of our construction season. So we're gonna see what we can and can't do in there. Can we get in there and do surveys and different things? But then it brings the construction window into August and September, and there might be other restrictions in there due to fire and different things. So I haven't had a chance to go into the county yet and show them that document and get their comments, but we'll be doing that soon.
Right. And part of the environmental analysis that was done by the Brad's team was to look at those various impacts of when the timber harvest would be conducted, whether it be done in summertime or over snow, and each of those kind of alternatives has the appropriate mitigation measures so that when timber is harvested, they're not going to be working, for example, within the confines of a stream or a wetland, and also be respective of the various habitats that were identified. So there's a minimal impact on the habitat to the animals and the infrastructure on the mountain.
That's great. I think it's important to note that you guys have been, great keepers of the asset. Mount Spokane is a beautiful state park and one that many people enjoy summer and winter. And I appreciate your team's work in maintaining what we have, and also as you move to expand, that you have been aware and you've combined the concerns of the community in your expansion plans, because this is an asset that is important to all of us. So why don't we give, I will admit I haven't been up there for a while, so maybe you can tell me if I'm thinking about heading up to Mount Spokane, what can I see up there? What kind of runs do you have? What kind of facilities are available? Is it just skiing? What's available to me?
Well, Mount Spokane State Park, again, is the largest state park in the system. In the winter, it is definitely a backyard playground. Probably one of the biggest user groups that's growing more and more is snowshoeing now. And we have in the concession area and in the rest of the state park, there's lots of trail systems for all the different users. But snowshoers can now snowshoe through the concession area up to the Vista House, which is a historic building built in the 30s. And there's a little bit of an interpretive center in there, a roaring fire going and hot chocolate. So even if you're not into, obviously the Nordic area, cross-country skiing is one of the best in the state. But if you're not into skiing, whether it's Nordic or Alpine, anybody can go snowshoeing, and it's a great way to get out in the winter and get above the clouds and and see a whole different perspective.
And how many runs do you have?
We
And
have,
is it all hard, or for some of us who may decide to go try skiing with our kids that are now getting old enough to ski, is there an ability to do a few easy slopes and a bunny hill?
you bet. Well, Mount Spokane's mission is to
I'm
teach
talking personal
people.
here. Can you tell?
Our mission is to teach people to ski. That's how the nonprofit was formed, is to get people outdoors and facilitate it. And that's not only through lessons, but just in pricing, keeping it low. And so we will teach 1,400 people to ski each season.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's one of the largest ski schools in the region. We also have a tubing hill, which a lot of people enjoy. I mean, you just sit on the tube and go down and ride the lift back up. But a lot of opportunities for people to get into the sport. Some of our easy ski programs really make it easy with 3 lessons, 3 rentals, and 3 lift tickets for less than what the lift ticket would cost. And so you get the rentals and the lessons and everything in there into one package. So great way to great gift during the Christmas holidays.
And
too.
Brad, part of the expansion is designed to accommodate various kinds of skiers. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It was actually to facilitate our Learn to Ski programs. So it's gonna really enhance that. It's a whole another section of the mountain, and it decreases our skier densities in our choke points on the mountain because we're able to spread beginner and low intermediate to another side of the mountain.
You're able to keep those of us who need to take a few lessons out of the way of those who have a lot of experience. So I think I appreciate that.
And you've also made some physical improvements to the facilities themselves.
We have, working with John and his whole team down at the permitting and planning. It's been amazing. The last few years we've received a few grants through the capital program, through the state, and also through a jobs bill. We've done a major addition to the main lodge and all new bathrooms, and the front facade of the lodge is all new, so it's a lot better sense of arrival. And it's just lots of really cool things happening on the mountain. Lots of businesses donating materials and time and machinery to help out in those projects. So if you haven't been up to Mount Spokane in a while, come give us a visit, because it's a lot different.
So as you go into expansion mode, are skiers going to have any access challenges? Are there going to be, any road changes or closures, or what's going to be the impact to your current skiers as they as you go into the expansion mode?
I think, as Brad has explained briefly, part of this expansion process will involve a vacation, which is elimination of a current roadway, which is a pretty minor action, but really the expansion is really designed for no major changes to the major ingress and egress to the mountain, but really the improvements to what they call the backside of the mountain, to allow for a new area to be open to skiers, and of the various kind of runs that Brad talked to, so they can have more intermediate runs or beginner areas, so ease some of that congestion. But it really would occur what they used to call, I think, or commonly referred to as the backside, with a whole new area of terrain opened up, which people have skied right now, but it's difficult to access those if skiers who get in trouble on that part of the mountain. So this will also provide some of the increased safety for the skiers to enjoy that part of the mountain.
That's fantastic. And just a reminder, and maybe you hit on this, but what is the timeline for completion of this whole project? Assuming all the permitting works itself out in a timely manner, what is your timeline for completion?
Well, again, we would need to sit down with agencies and flesh out all the different requirements, but we're hopeful of starting this construction season, which would be this summer. We have to do an archaeology survey, and that's after the snow is gone, so that's kind of starts the timeline. And then we've got that breeding and nesting period that we talked about briefly. But we can be doing surveys and preparing for the work prior to that. And then, again, with John's permission, August 1st, we'd like to start the timber harvest and doing our final surveys for construction and grading. And then probably it would take us the next summer to get the lift already engineered and built and ready to put in. So if we can cut the runs this summer, though, because there is an access road to the bottom of Chair 4, people could ski it. It wouldn't be as convenient as riding a lift back up, but people could ski it, see it, and enjoy it, and we would be spreading a lot more people around the mountain. It would be a lot of fun for everybody. So we'd love to get the timber harvest done this summer.
as soon as the decision by the State Parks Commission was rendered, Brad and I had a conversation about starting that permit process as soon as possible so that we can facilitate that timber harvest to best suit the needs of the mountain, whether it be over snow or in the springtime or wintertime. Makes no difference. We'll certainly work with him and his team to get all the agencies in the room together to begin that permitting process and start that coordination so they can get started on phase one, which is, I think, the timber harvest, and then proceed from there.
Well, that's great. I'm excited. I love the work that you're doing up there. I've seen the plans. I think it looks beautiful. I like the fact that there's some easier slopes for those of us who may not have skied much in the last 20 years. And I have kids that are now ready to ski. They're hitting that age where they've been okay. So, I've said no to this point, but now it's time to get back out. So it will be fun. I personally am a snowshoer, but I have not had the opportunity to head up to Mount Spokane. I tend to go South Valley and down into some of our conservation features areas. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to head back up to Mount Spokane and enjoy the views. We do have some time left, so maybe we can transition a little bit and you can talk to, if you had some things you wanted to share about maybe skier safety. We talked about the fact that oftentimes people go outside of our developed ski areas. Mm-hmm. Any advice on folks who decide to do that at this time? And just some cautions in being careful.
Absolutely. Well, we've seen a greater amount each year of people heading into side country or back country, and part of it's the romanticism of trying something new, and another part is equipment. I mean, equipment is so much more advanced now that people can travel off-piste or off the developed terrain a lot easier than they could back 10, 15 years ago. The challenge is if something happens back there and people don't know they're back there, if they get hurt, it's difficult to find them and get them out, even with advanced technologies that we have. We had a skier last year, a very experienced skier that we know very well, who was an employee at the mountain. He hit a tree and punctured a lung. It took 9 of our ski patrollers 4 hours to get him out of there and get him back. And he was a very strong young man, and we were very fortunate that he survive. But that amount of resources it takes to get one person out of a situation like that is a challenge, because it leaves the rest of the mountain vulnerable to if you've got half your ski patrol back there. So that's one of the things that this development plan addresses, is that we've got a third of the ski area basically that we haven't been able to manage consistent with the rest of the ski area, and we've had to insure it, we're responsible for it, and we've paid lease payments on it, but haven't been able to do anything in there as far as skier safety. So this will enable us to get in there, clean up some of the areas that are really have a lot of down timber, and patrol it and keep it safe.
That's great.
I was going to mention that as well. I think part of the comments that we saw in the environmental documents were the ability to access that part of the mountain. And due to the nature of the existing the forest and the trees, it was very difficult to get people back there because the nature of it's not an improved area and the access is very limited. So it is definitely a concern for the public safety to have the ability to have ski patrol back there and provide that safety aspect for the skiers that would use this new area.
That's great. Thank you for that. So we have about 3 minutes left, and so I want to give you an opportunity to really promote Mount Spokane State Park and the ski area, and tell our viewers where they can find information and why they should come visit you this year.
You bet. Well, again, Mount Spokane is a huge asset. Being this close, it's owned by the citizens of Spokane, and it's your mountain. Night skiing is a key piece. You can get off work and be up there and get the kids out of school and ski from 4 to 9:30 at night. We're open from Wednesday through Sunday and 7 days a week here during the holiday stretch. But it's just a great asset that's geared towards the people of Spokane. So come and use it and enjoy it and give us feedback, because we are there for you guys.
And I was going to say, can you tell us where our citizens can find information on Mount Spokane?
Probably the most user-friendly is the website, and that's mtspokane.com, mountspokane.com. Or you're welcome to call us at any time at 509-238-2220, and we've got staff there all who are very knowledgeable on all the different parts and pieces. And a lot of times it's hard to go to a website and see how does this best meet my needs or my family's needs, but call us and we will walk you through the best way to get the most value out of your dollar and the most enjoyable experience.
Okay, and in the last 30 seconds or so, do you have any partnerships that you want to highlight and things you want to say for folks that have been helping you get through this process?
Oh boy, that is
It's more than
very
30
long
seconds,
list.
isn't it?
There's been so many, just the public support has been phenomenal. And there's been 8 different public hearings and testimonies at different areas around the state. The City of Spokane Parks and Rec, therapeutic programs and adaptive programs. They traveled to Bellingham with us this year, to Quincy, Washington. They've traveled all around because this is really important to those programs for physically and mentally challenged skiers and testifying. Many different, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but there's just so many people who have given so much time and effort and money even to make this happen that it's just humbling as a paid staff person to even try to give you a list right now. But
Well, I think that you did a great job, and unfortunately we're out of time today, but we will say thanks to all of those supporters who helped us get to where we are at this expansion, and I hope you have enjoyed our discussion about the expansion at Mount Spokane Ski and Snowboard Park, and I hope your viewers have caught some of the excitement. Many thanks to General Manager Brad McQuarrie and Planning Director John Pederson for joining me today. I'm County Commissioner Shelly O'Quinn, and thank you for joining us all for Spokane County Spotlight.